And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Toronto International Film Festival's renown as one of the world's top cinematic events, the staging ground for the top films in any given year. But since the festival's opening last week, a protest over the Israel-Palestine conflict has taken center stage. At issue is the festival's decision to host a showcase on Israeli films from Tel Aviv for its inaugural city-to-city program. Palestinian activists say the TIFF spotlight plays into Israel's attempt to improve its global image in the wake of the assault on the Gaza Strip and the ongoing occupation of Palestinian land. In the weeks before the festival, a group of artists and writers drafted a letter of protest against the Tel Aviv spotlight. The letter is called the Toronto Delegation, No Celebration of Occupation. It says in part, quote, "Whether intentionally or not, TIFF has become complicit in the Israeli propaganda machine. We do not protest the individual Israeli filmmakers, nor do we in any way suggest that Israeli films should be unwelcome at TIFF. However, especially in the wake of this year's brutal assault on Gaza, we object to the use of such an important international festival in staging a propaganda campaign on behalf of an apartheid regime," unquote. The declaration has attracted over 1,500 signatories, including actors Jane Fonda, Viggo Mortensen, and Danny Glover, musician David Byrne, and the actor and musician Harry Belanfonte. But it's been met with scathing criticism and accusations of anti-Semitism. Supporters of the Israeli government have accused the Toronto Declaration members of a slew of false charges, including that they want to boycott Israeli films and even the entire festival itself. Well, the journalist Naomi Klein was one of the original authors of the Toronto Declaration. She joins us now in our Firehouse studio. And Naomi, just lay out the whole conflict and how you got involved and what this declaration is.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me back, Amy. I just want to make one tiny correction, which is that the letter doesn't call Israel an apartheid state. It says that this is a state that many respected people have described as an apartheid state, like Jimmy Carter, Desmond Tutu. So it invokes them and it quotes them. And I think that's an important distinction, because what we're trying to pull out in this letter is that this is a controversial decision, and the people who have signed it are saying exactly what the declaration is called, that they don't believe this is a time of celebration, that the 42-year occupation continues. But moreover, this is the year that began in January with bombs and missiles falling on Gaza, leading to the deaths of an estimated 1,400 people, many of them children. There's been no accountability for those crimes. Israel continues to refuse to cooperate, even with a basic UN fact-finding mission led by the respected South African judge, Richard Goldstone. So we're very clear. This is not about whether or not there are Israeli films at the Toronto International Film Festival. Every year there are. Of course there should be. They're welcome. If the films are wonderful, they should win honors. What's happening at the Toronto International Film Festival this year is that not films, but a city is being honored, the city of Tel Aviv. The mayor of Tel Aviv is in Toronto being feted because this is seen as something that's really good for Israeli tourism. So this is really departing from the realm of arts and entering the realm of politics and industry in this decision to grant this honor and this privilege to the city of Tel Aviv. So that's why people started objecting to it. And it wasn't us who started it. It was Palestinians who rejected to the granting of this special status, this honored status for the state of Israel in this year's festival.
Explain why the Toronto International Film Festival is celebrating Tel Aviv.
Well, this is a controversial question. The Cameron Bailey, the co-director of the festival, says that it was entirely his decision, that there was no political interference, and we take him at his word. He's very respected in the film community. But what we are saying is that whether knowingly or not, this decision fits in with a campaign, a very aggressive campaign that has been launched by Israel's foreign ministry to use culture really as a weapon to distract attention from the occupation and from the allegations of war crimes in Gaza, but even before the Gaza attack. What's interesting is that Toronto has been selected to test market something that is called Brand Israel, the rebranding of Israel. And this is because Toronto has really been a kind of a battleground. It has a very strong Palestinian community and solidarity community. It also has a very large and active Jewish community, and it's been a battle zone. So actually, Canada has more Israeli diplomats than any other country in the world, because this, including the United States, despite our relatively small population, because the Israeli government sees Canada as a very important battleground, as a very important testing ground. So Toronto has been selected to sort of test drive this rebranding campaign for Israel. And, you know, it's not our imagination. It's not a quiet conspiracy. It's this. We've read about this in the New York Times and Reuters reports. And I'll just give you one example. A couple of months after the attack on Gaza, as we remember, this was really a turning point in terms of world opinion with regards to Israel. There were protests around the world. In London, there were an estimated 100,000 people in the streets condemning Israel's actions. Opinion polls were showing a plummeting of support. And more people were starting to talk about using tactics like the tactics that were used against South Africa during the apartheid years, that's saying that there has to be strategies beyond just talk. And so it was in this context that a top official in Israel's foreign ministry said, and this was quoted in the New York Times, "We will send well-known novelists and writers overseas, theater company exhibits. This way you show Israel's prettier face, so we are not thought of purely in the context of war." And so this has been playing out at a lot of cultural festivals, and you've covered this on the show before. The Paris Book Fair, which is an enormously important book festival, had a special spotlight on Israel for its 60th birthday a couple of years ago. The Turin Book Fair also did. But this, and there were protests, but they were much quieter than what's happened now in Toronto, and that's because of Gaza, I would say. It's because now, because of the year that we're in, because of the continued impunity for Israeli war crimes, people are drawing a line and saying this is no time to celebrate.
Respond to Ivan Reitman, the film director, who said film is essentially about telling global stories, of exploring the complexities and contradictions of the human condition. Any attempt to silence that conversation, to hijack the festival for any political agenda, in the end only serves to silence artistic voices.
You know, I would actually agree with that statement, but it isn't us who did that. We didn't politicize the festival. We objected to the politicization of the festival. We're not trying to silence anyone, but by simply voicing our opposition to the festival's decision to grant Israel this special status. You know, when we looked into this whole rebranding strategy, Jewish Voices for Peace, the terrific anti-occupation San Francisco-based organization, jvp.org, they've produced this great document, a fact check of all the lies that are being spread about our campaign, that I really urge people to look up. But they talk about, they have some documents talking about this rebranding campaign and the goals of it, and they quote a top PR official in Israel saying that the real goal is to create a narrative of normalcy. That's a quote, a narrative of normalcy around Israel. So you can have a tiny little compartment where you can criticize Israel's actions in Gaza or the expansion of settlements, but when it comes to every other part of Israeli society, we have to act like nothing is going on. We should, of course, celebrate Tel Aviv in a film festival and at book festivals.